and welcome to Mumbai Matters. I am Purva Chitnis, special correspondent with ThePrint. Today in this episode of Mumbai Matters, we will be discussing how there are certain administrative wards in the BMC that are currently without their permanent heads or ward officers or also assistant commissioners. What are these BMC wards and what is the politics behind it? We will be discussing all of this in today's episode of Mumbai Matters. But first, let's understand what are the administrative wards in the BMC. Now, an administrative ward, for a comparison purpose, let's say they are like small districts. BMC that takes care of Mumbai has divided Mumbai city into 25 administrative wards. And for our comparison purpose, let's say that these administrative wards are like a district. Each administrative ward has a ward office which is run by an assistant commissioner or a ward officer. These ward officers are like the collector of that particular administrative ward. This ward officer is a link between the municipal commissioner and the citizens. Now, there are 25 administrative wards in BMC Mumbai limits, and these 25 wards are named from A to T. So what are these 11 wards that do not have the ward officer who's also called as assistant commissioner? So these vacant positions are in wards A, which falls in Kolaba, ward B, which is the Dongri area, C, Mumbai Devi area, E, which is the Baikala area, P South, that is Goregaon, R South, that is Kandivali, R North, that is Dahisar, L ward, which is Kurla, S, that is Bhandup area, T ward, that is Mulund, and the newly carved 25th ward, which is P East, that is Malad East. Along with these administrative wards, there are still 5 more vacant positions which are in the departments of planning, SWM, 2 in the encroachment and 1 in market. Now, as I mentioned earlier, each of this ward is run by a ward officer or an assistant commissioner. Now, within this entire ward, the ward officer is responsible to take care of the administrative function of that ward. There are certain duties and responsibilities of ward officers, and what are these? Let's understand. A ward officer is responsible of taking care of complaints of citizens or councillors. He then forwards them to the respective departments. The ward officer is also responsible for inspection of repair works in their particular ward. The ward officer also puts a proposal relating to road encroachment or street sweeping. The ward officer is also responsible for holding regular meetings with various departments. The ward officer also goes on ground and does inspection. Now that we've understood what are the duties and responsibilities of a ward officer, let's also understand how is this ward officer selected. Now, this ward officer is selected through a process of MPSC, which is the Maharashtra Public Services Commission. Now, MPSC is a body that falls under the General Administration Department of the government, which is handled by the Chief Minister. Now, what normally happens is through this MPSC exam, the candidates are selected. Now, to appear for that MPSC exam, the officer needs to have at least a 5-year of administrative class 2 experience. Only then the person can appear for the MPSC exam. Now, what has happened in this episode is that the MPSC has still yet to give its final recommendation to the government, to the BMC, about the appointees. Now, there is a timeline of 2 years for which the MPSC has still not given its recommendation, and these 11 wards that I mentioned earlier do not have an assistant commissioner. What is that timeline? Now, what has happened is that the posts were advertised by the MPSC in July 2021. Then, a written exam for the same was held in October of that same year, that is October 2021. Then, the interview of the shortlisted candidates were, however, held 2 years later, that is in August 2023, the final results of which were declared in September 2023. So, since then, that is September 2023, these posts which are vacant are still awaiting a final nod by the MPSC. So, the MPSC has to send its final recommendation list to the BMC. Only then the selected candidates can be appointed on these different 11 wards that we mentioned earlier. So does that mean that these administrative wards do not have any head that is running it? Absolutely not. because the BMC has appointed a temporary position, which is the executive engineer of that ward, is now running those wards. But is it the right way to go about? Well, if the councillors or the former corporators are to be asked, what they told us is that the daily duties of the ward are not getting affected. They are still getting their daily duties done because the executive engineer is from the BMC itself, and that person has a vast amount of experience under his or her belt, and that is why the person is capable to handle the ward. But when we talk to the current serving ward officers of different wards, they told us that this is definitely not the way to go about, because these ward officers go through a rigorous process of administrative work experience as well as giving the exam of MPSC, and they have the know-how about how the ward should be functioning. There is a rule, there is a process that needs to be functioning. An executive engineer, although he or she is now running these wards, that person might take some time to understand the functioning of the ward, which means that person is expert in his or her own department, but to understand and function and carry out the duties of the entire ward, that person will take some time, and in the meantime, the complaints of the citizens or the other work of different departments might get hampered. The complaints might pile up, and that is why the work on those particular wards might get affected. Now, that is why the opposition in Mumbai, especially the Shiv Sena UBT leader Aditya Thackeray and Mumbai Congress President Varsha Gaikwad, has asked the government to do these appointments quickly. They have also alleged that the government has an anti-Mumbai attitude, and in fact, they are just dilly-dallying this process and not getting onto this process quickly. Now remember, the BMC's term is over. The BMC's term got over in March 2022, and since then the BMC is being run by a state appointed administrator, and that is why the questions stop at the state government's door, because the MPSC body also comes within the General Administration Department, which is run by the CM himself, and that is why these questions are asked to the government. Now you tell us whether you have been facing such problems in your wards, and what else do you think that BMC should be doing, or any problem that you might be facing. That's all we have for you in this episode of Mumbai Matters. Do let us know what do you think about this, and if there are any other topics that you want us to take up. That's all from me. This is Purva Chitnis signing off for ThePrint.